I have nothing but respect for Captain Brayden Schenn after his decision during the trade deadline.
Hey, this is Brayden Schenn. Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here in the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk to you about my respect for Captain Brayden Schenn, the playoff hunt, and a look around the Central. We do have a lot to get into today, and I am happy to say that I do feel a lot better than yesterday's episode. I know towards the end of yesterday's episode, I was kind of crashing out just a little bit. But it was completely valid, by the way. My crash out was justified by the fact of the matter of the Blues are going to probably finish as the best worst team again. But I really want to focus on a couple things in today's episode. And one is Brayden Schenn. I think when it comes to Brayden Schenn, right, there is a lot that fans need to appreciate. And that is the fact of the matter that he decided to not waive his no trade clause, setting him to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and decided to stay with his team here in St. Louis. A lot of you might think that maybe this was a selfish move, a move that isn't the best for the Blues right now. And I actually think the opposite. I think at the end of the day, you have a no trade clause, and that is your right as an NHL player. You don't have to waive your no trade clause because the team that you're currently on is struggling. If anything, that's on the general manager of the team for giving out no trade clauses to a bunch of players. And do I think that getting a first round draft pick in 2027 would be beneficial? Absolutely. I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, you have to also take into account that a player has the right not to waive their no trade clause. And this goes back to even Torrey Krug, as I mentioned in yesterday's episode of Locked On Blues, when I talked about how he didn't want to come to Philadelphia and he didn't want to waive his no trade clause. That was his right, his decision. And at the end of the day, it is very unfortunate what happened to him with the injury. But he wanted to play here in St. Louis. And you have to commend players too for sticking up for what they want to do, especially when it comes to their careers. And Brayden Schenn is 33. He has a family. They live in St. Louis. He doesn't want to uproot his life and go to Toronto. And I know that he doesn't really want to talk about it too much. And at the same time, I get that too. I think that us fans want to know maybe a little bit of why he made the decision that he made. But I think it's a very respectable decision. And I think it's a decision that I don't see any negativity stemming from. I see this decision as a player knowing what he wants to do with his career. And Doug Armstrong is notorious for handing out no trade clauses with his contracts. And at some point, despite a player maybe being a veteran in the league for over a decade and having, I have to say, a lot of success, you have to stop handing them these no trade clauses if one day they could bring you a first round draft pick. And I'm not saying necessarily Brayden Schenn as an example, but even a player like Torrey Krug, and I hate to use him as an example because he is hurt, and I don't feel like that's 100% fair. But at the same time, what did he do to St. Louis? I'm not saying Boston. I'm saying St. Louis only to deserve to have a no trade clause. And you see this with a lot of these older players that they feel like because they've been in the league for a while, that it's their right to have a no trade clause, and they negotiate that into their contracts. So essentially, you're telling me that if you're above the age of 32 in the NHL, you're guaranteed a no trade clause. I don't believe that. I think that's actually kind of stupid, and I'm not on board with that. So as a GM, you have to have a stronger backbone. And if it means not getting a player like a Torrey Krug because you won't accept, hey, if I don't have a no trade clause, I'm not coming to play for your team, then so be it. Because having this dead cap space, and I hate using words like that, but there's no other way to kind of get around the point that I'm trying to make without being a little bit harsh. It ends up being dead cap space. It ends up being useless because at some point, you're going to try to move these older players. And if they have a no trade clause and they don't want to go, or they only want to waive it for one or two teams, you're going to have a really hard time negotiating for good assets back. And I think as a GM, again, I have no experience being a general manager, but I think being somebody that's been covering multiple hockey teams in this league for half a decade, I kind of have a good sense of what is a good move and what is a bad move. And I can tell you this, handing out no trade clauses like you're giving out candy on Halloween is a bad move. I think maybe on a team you should have one or two players that have a no trade clause. I think that it's just become a trend, especially with the Blues, for a lot of players to have these no trade clauses when they haven't done really much of anything to earn it as a Blue. Maybe on another team they did, and I commend them. But it's like Brayden Schenn, right? He only wanted to play for the Panthers. And we saw this trend before with another player, Claude Giroux, who was on the Flyers. He only wanted to play for the Panthers. And when you have players that have these no trade clauses that only want to play for one team, you don't get a lot of good in return. And for the Boston Bruins, like, I'm happy, obviously, that they did get a good return because, again, it's Boston and we don't like them. They didn't get much for Brad Marchand, which is absolutely insane. But at the same time, the Bruins had nothing really to negotiate with because that's the only team that he wanted to go to. So for Florida, it was relatively easy. It was, hey, we can basically do whatever we want here because they're not looking anywhere else. And that's why when it comes to Brayden Schenn, I do have to commend him because there is a lot of players that do screw over teams in a sense where they only want to go to one team. But Schenn staying in St. Louis, I don't think it's going to actually hurt this team. I think it's actually for the better. The draft pick that the Philadelphia Flyers got was in 2027, a couple years down the line. But that team's in a whole different situation than the Blues are in. The Blues are in a situation where they do have a lot of good prospects, right? And they do have talent that's up and coming. Philadelphia is in a complete rebuild, and they've been open and transparent about that. Do I think the Blues need to go into a rebuild mode? Absolutely. And I've said that, but I'm not going to waste my breath on this podcast repeating the obvious time and time again. I think that this team knows what they need to do, and they're not necessarily going to do it. So you have nothing really that you really have nothing of leverage at the moment. And maybe 2-3 years down the line, when Schenn's contract is up, you just let him go, and that's that, and that's fine to me. But in no way do I think that he did anything to screw over this team. I think he made the best decision for himself, and you can't hate on that. If there's anyone that you should be annoyed with, it is Doug Armstrong, but I'm not going to sit here and see any slander towards the captain of my hockey team that made a decision based on a clause that he had in his contract. So anyways, Brayden Schenn already hit his 1,000th game milestone, and he will be having a pregame ceremony March 16th in the game against the Anaheim Ducks. And the celebration will include a video tribute, a presentation of the gifts from the Blues organization, and a silver stick. Schenn's family will also join him on the ice for the ceremony, and the team will be wearing special jerseys commemorating the milestones in the warm-ups. In addition, video messages from several of Schenn's teammates will also be played throughout the night. Schenn also says, you don't think about 1,000 games, you look back on it. You embrace the grind, embrace the ups and downs, and how this league is and how many good players there are. It's a special league to be a part of. I've always said St. Louis has been the best thing for me. Again, probably why he didn't want to leave. And I got a great opportunity. I love it here, and I spent so many good years here. Did a milestone here in St. Louis. It means a lot to me. 8 seasons playing on the Blues, 16 seasons overall. And I have to say that he obviously wanted to be here and he didn't want to go anywhere else. So I think that speaks for itself. But we also need to talk about the playoff hunt. Yes, this team somehow, some way is still in playoff contention. Trust me, I'm a little confused as well. We'll also talk about Factor. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and you're ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's calorie smart, protein plus, or keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and a grab and go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I recently tried their Protein Plus meals, and they were packed with flavor and they kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/locked on NHL 50 off and use code locked on NHL 50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code locked on NHL 50 off at factormeals.com/locked on NHL 50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Somehow, some way, this team is in the hunt for the playoffs, and it really does blow my mind, right? And this has been something that I have talked about on other episodes of how is this team still standing? Well, they're somehow winning games. They didn't sell at the deadline. Like, there's a lot of reasons and determining factors, but definitely with Colton Parayko being out, and that loss against the Kings, you kind of saw the boys, and even the game against you just kind of saw the boys drift a little bit defensively, right? But as I said, they're still in the hunt. So right now, above the Blues, it's the Canucks with 69 points as well, but they played 2 less games. And then Calgary has 70 points. The Blues sit at 69 points, 65 games played, 31 dubs, 27 losses, and then 7 OTLs, which it ends up being pros and cons when it comes to that. But overall, this team is definitely playing some better hockey, not fantastic hockey, but better hockey. It's funny because even tonight, like and I can look around the NHL, and I'm going to do that in a little bit. But when you have teams like the Winnipeg Jets that have 92 points already with 65 games played, they're going to be the first team to 100 points. I mean, the Dallas Stars are 86 right now, and I'm going to look around the NHL in a second in my last segment. But the point I'm trying to make is that somehow, someway, this team is the 18th best team in the NHL, which does bother me. And you've heard my rants about it. I think being a middle tier team is an absolute joke. I think it's pathetic, and I think that it's stupid. I don't think any team that finishes in the middle really is going to have any kind of breaking, insane offseason. I think it's just being in a plateau. I think if you're going to try to get good draft picks, you're going to tank. And if you're going to actually be a playoff team, you're going to actually make it into the playoffs without doing this whole, let's go wait until game 82 of the season. Like, that is so stupid to me. And the fan base, they're going to be annoyed because right now, if the playoffs began today, the Blues wouldn't be in it. Okay? They wouldn't. And I feel like for the fan base, it's going to be 3 consecutive seasons if that happens. And it'll be the second time in franchise history since 2005 to 2008. And that to me is a joke. You want fans to take your team seriously, but in the tenure so far of Captain Brayden Schenn, this team has yet to go to the playoffs. And not playing playoff hockey, not for nothing, makes the hockey season feel like a waste. And unless you're in a rebuild, and then in that case, maybe it's like a little bit different and it's like a little bit better and a little bit more justifiable. But you can't have a GM like Doug Armstrong who's going to say, well, yeah, we're going to try for the playoffs. Do this insane offer sheet with the Edmonton Oilers in the offseason, getting Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, and that's it. You get Foxa, okay? You get Ryan Suter, who ended up being one of your best defensemen. Obviously, Cam Fowler has been lights out. As I said, the Fowler family had a baby. That's why he wasn't at the last game. But Cam will be back in Pittsburgh. But you can't also just get these old, and I know Holloway and Broberg are young, but even Texier, I don't feel like he's even been playing that well. Zach Bolduc, I'll give him credit. He has been playing much better hockey, and he has been one of the best rookies of this NHL season, not just on St. Louis, but amongst all rookies. But still, at the same time, it just feels like there's something missing with this team. Maybe it's consistency. Maybe it's a good penalty kill. Maybe it's a good power play. maybe physicality a little bit, speed, spacing, skating even. Um, there's a lot about this team that needs improvement, which is why when they sit with 65 games played at 69 points, yeah, you're above 500. That's awesome. So are the Anaheim Ducks. Like, being above 500, like, I'm sure that there's some teams that would strive to be above 500. But let me put it in perspective. When you look at the East, the New York Islanders are above 500, but yet they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots out of having a playoff spot. It doesn't really mean much of anything to be out of 500 in this day and age. It doesn't. And you can say what you want. You can say, oh, well, this is better than last season. Okay, maybe. But you're still not in the playoffs. So I feel like, again, it's excuses that we're hearing time and time again. And I don't mind being that person that comes on here and says it. I mean, if you want to talk about an embarrassment of a season, you can also look at and I'm going to talk about this when I talk about all the teams, obviously. Like, if we were the Predators this season, I would be annoyed. Well, I mean, yeah, obviously I'd be upset, but at least they're going to get a good draft pick. But it is funny, though, when you think about it, because right now, this team, since the break, I'll give them credit. They've been 6-1-1, I believe, and that's awesome. That's probably the best hockey they've ever really played. I mean, having a 4-game win streak was big for the boys, and I just want them to continue to play tough hockey, play with meaning, and they kind of have to at this point. When you really do think about it, there's no other options. There's no more excuses. You have to play tough. You have to play hard, because at the end of the day, for this team, it's playoffs or nothing. Because if you don't make it into the playoffs, you're going to be that middle team again. And I'm not even like saying that as a prediction. I'm saying it as a fact. That's a factual statement. That's not even like, oh, this is my prediction. That's a factual statement. So these guys know what they have to play for. And I wouldn't be surprised if this offseason nothing happened. Like, that's also like the most like Doug Armstrong thing to do as well, is to do absolutely nothing. But am I surprised about it? No, I'm just used to it. And again, I know I'm like a little bit tough, a little bit critical of the team today, but somebody has to be. And if you're not going to look at this team and be a little bit critical, a little bit tough, a little bit saying it for how it is, you're going to fall into this la la land of delusion. And I know that in some of my episodes, I was going back and forth because I was like, well, if they stand pat, I'll be happy. And then I thought about it, I'm like, oh, they should sell. I just don't want this team to be complacent and to just be a consistent middle team in the NHL. I'm seeing all these other teams rebuilding, and for the VGK, Vegas, they've done everything right basically since they joined this league. And I see teams like that, but then I also see teams that kind of took a fall for the worse, like the Kraken. Like, not all these expansion teams are going to come in and do amazing. Like, that's actually very rare that even happen. But I think my whole main point is that you need to be aggressive, you need to sell, and you can't be emotionally attached to players. And I feel like that's how it is. And even Doug's one quote where he's like, I want the players to tell me what they want to do. You just can't be emotionally attached to them. Like, at the end of the day, this is a business. So just stick to the business side of things, and that's that. All right, I'm going to talk to my friends over at, I have a lot of friends today, but I have a special friend at Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk or on a road trip where I just need a quick protein boost, and they're always my go-to. If you love cracking open every shell through that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Let's go take a look around the NHL and mostly the Central Division, because that's my main focus. I mean, like, yeah, we're going to look at the West too, but I want to also look at my Central Division. So right now in the Central, leading is the Winnipeg Jets. As I said, 92 points, 44 wins, 17 losses, 4 OTL. It's absolutely insane to have under 20 losses in this season so far. Then you have the Dallas Stars, the 86 points, 42 wins, 20 losses, and 2 OTL. You have the Avalanche behind in the third spot, 39 wins, 24 losses, 2 OTL, 80 points. Then the Minnesota Wild in that fourth spot, 36 wins, 24 losses, and 4 OTL, 76 points. Then you have the Blues. Um, yeah, 31 wins, 27 losses, 7 OTL, 69 points. Utah, 28 wins, 25 losses, and 11 OTL, 67 points. And then you have a drop off with the Nashville Predators with 24 wins, 32 losses, 7 OTL, 55 points. And then in last, you have the Chicago Blackhawks with only 20 wins, 36 losses, 9 OTL, 49 points. Just to compare, though, because I do find this interesting, the VGK are leading the Pacific right now with 82 points, 38 wins, 19 losses, 6 OTL. If you put the VGK, as I said, 82 points, they would be in third place in the Central. The Washington Capitals, though, they also have 92 points, 42 wins, 14 losses. One of the losses was to us and 8 OTLs. And then you have a huge drop off between the Capitals and the Canes because the Canes only have 80 points and then the Devils have 74 points. Like, it just puts it in perspective how competitive the Central is. And then if you look at the East, the Panthers are leading with 83 points. Very low, very low. The Maple Leafs have 81, and then the Tampa has 78. Ottawa has 71. Montreal 66. Detroit 66. Bruins 66. And Sabres 56. As I said, I've always said this heading into the season that the Central Division was going to be the toughest division in the NHL. That's not an opinion. That is a fact. And I do believe the reason why the Central is so competitive is because of the fact that maybe your first three teams, the Winnipeg Jets, the Dallas Stars, and the Colorado Avalanche, are all teams that are very similar in a sense of them being cup hungry. And I feel like for all of those teams, they all would have a chance to maybe win the cup. And when I think about that, I specifically think, too, that Dallas might be a little bit more frustrated out of all the other teams. They've been a cup contending favorite for quite a while, but they've always somehow choked and blew it in the playoffs. So for me, that's why I would say that I don't necessarily think I would feel confident with Dallas winning the cup, but I could definitely understand maybe them going to the second round. But I do think that coming out of the Central this year, the Winnipeg Jets are absolutely dominant. But I also have to say the Minnesota Wild have been kind of a surprise too, in a sense. I wasn't expecting the Wild to be playing as competitive and as good hockey as they've been playing. But also looking at the other teams in the West, obviously the VGK contending team yet again. You have the Edmonton Oilers, who are always in that hunt. I mean, the Oilers are a really, really strong team. Made it to the Cup Finals last year. Will they be able to do it again? That's difficult. Usually when the team makes it to the finals, they don't go back. Obviously, Florida proved that wrong. And then the Kings are a team that I was a little bit surprised about. I just did not think they were going to be as strong, but they have proven me wrong and a lot of people wrong in the NHL. Looking at the East, though, because I know we don't really talk about the East that much, I would say if I had to choose one team in the East, I would choose the Washington Capitals. And obviously the Florida Panthers are another team where you can't count them out either just because they are the defending Cup champions. So there is a lot of competitiveness in the NHL. I will talk to you tomorrow. The music's getting a little bit loud. I'm at the arena. But like always, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Blues with Blues content every single day. I hope you guys can still hear me. And like always, let's go Blues.